Madame et Monsieur Sacre Bleu. The French military just dropped a brutal bomb on Donald Trump. For those of you gunning for World War III, you may just get your wish. This is Occupy Democrats. I'm David Reddish. So Donald Trump's sudden and asinine declaration that he wants to retake the Panama Canal and annex Greenland, territory currently controlled by Denmark, has picked up plenty of ink since he took office last week. It seems like nobody here in the States, his supporters among them, is really taking the aspirations seriously. And of those that do, it seems nobody considers the possibility that trying to take over Greenland could lead to military action. And no, the United States is not invincible on that front. For further proof, please review a history of Vietnam and Iraq. Not that Trump realizes the uncertain outcome of a military conflict over Greenland, or much of anything else. How else could anyone explain statements like this one?
I don't know really what claim Denmark has to it, but it would be a very unfriendly act if they didn't allow that to happen, because that's for protection of the free world. It's not for us, it's for the free world. Right now you have Russian ships, you have China ships, you have ships from various countries. It's not a good situation.
I mean, yes, there is the possibility that Trump is crazy, mentally decomposing, or possibly syphilitic, but for the sake of this story, we're going to go with stupid. It seems the French military feels the same way, hence the latest action that should have every patriotic American on edge. The rest of the world already is. Trump has opened a dialogue with Denmark over the future of Greenland, but needless to say, the Danes are not eager to sell. Greenland is a land rich with natural resources, including vital metals and minerals used in building microchips or other computer equipment. The United States already has access to these materials through free trade with Denmark. Of course, if Trump wants to enact tariffs, that may not last. But that's another story. Back to the matter at hand. Trump has already strained conversations with Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen and Greenland's PM Mut Ige. Earlier, they had this response.
Så vil jeg gerne slå fast, at det er i vores øjne en beslutning, der starter og slutter i Nuuk og i Grønland. Grønland er grønlændernes, ingen andres. Mutti, du har været meget klar i dine ord. Det er Grønland, der selv skal definere jeres fremtid. Det har vi meget, meget stor respekt for fra dansk side, og det vil jeg egentlig gerne opfordre til, at alle har.
Now Denmark's allies are ratcheting up the pressure. In a French-language radio interview today, French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot said that France would deploy troops to Greenland and Denmark should the United States continue to saber-rattle. Translating from the French, if Denmark calls for help, France will be there, he said. The European borders are sovereign whether it's north, south, east, and west. Nobody can allow themselves to mess around with our borders, end quote. Barrot went on to say that all of the European Union would deploy troops if need be. Danish Prime Minister Frederiksen is meeting today with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and French President Emmanuel Macron. She will also meet with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte this week. In other words, Americans may not take Trump's derangement seriously, but the rest of the world sure does. And for all of America's military might, there is no way in hell the United States could somehow go to war with the European Union and survive. Imagine how Russia or China could take advantage of that situation. Without question, the conflict would quickly spread out of control, much as it did in World War I and World War II. While Americans tend to remember those wars with a strange nostalgia, the reality of history paints a different picture. Hundreds of thousands of Americans died in the needless struggle of World War I, a conflict that resolved little tension between nations. That's why, just 30 years later, World War II happened, with even more bloodshed and destruction. The United States, Britain, Soviet Union, and their allies did win the war, yes. And yes, the war was necessary given the geopolitical situation at the time. But it had a horrifying cost, even for the United States. You know, there's a reason why President Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, and Joseph Stalin worked so hard at the Yalta Conference to establish the United Nations. They wanted to avoid another world war. The United Nations may not be perfect, and diplomacy may not have always succeeded throughout our history since World War II. But they have done one thing. They prevented another world war, and that's a very good thing. Advancements in war technology, such as the development of nuclear and biological weapons, mean that a World War III would likely mean the entire destruction of all civilization on the planet. And as much as you might like the Mad Max movies, Nobody wants to actually live through that. I'm reminded of a quote attributed to Queen Elizabeth I. Wars have uncertain outcomes. The future of Greenland, and for that matter the United States, looks uncertain with Trump on the march. The best freedom-loving Democrats and other patriotic Americans can do is oppose the Trump agenda in all its forms. Oppose his policies, oppose his cabinet picks, oppose his vision for the United States, and yes, spread the word. Spread the facts and help the world see the truth. You can count on us here at Occupy Democrats to do our part. I'm David Reddish.